this was just not only the facial expressions, but the mannerism in which he walked just seemed very deliberate.
But my underlying question to that was that it was significantly different. That was a very, very different expressions and observations that you had of Mr. Montana during this time that you're describing than at any other time before.
Well, as I've previously testified, I had not seen him really angry or upset, I thought, in person. So this is one time it just seemed like he had a different attitude about him.
Significantly different, right? I mean, you hadn't seen this as you described, this serious, deliberate, kind of angry look all at once before from Mr. Montana, right?
I don't recall, no.
You also mentioned that the only people that you spoke with at the district attorney's office were Ms. Scott and Ms. Zip, I believe. Is that right?
I think so, to be honest with you. It's been a long time, and talked to different people, and I don't know who's employed by the district attorney's office and who's not. I don't know how it works exactly.
Okay. Do you remember having a meeting at the district attorney's office with a Mr. Cunningham?
I don't know that name, I'm sorry.
Okay, he was a gentleman that was doing some computer animation, and did someone review computer animation with you at some point in time?
I believe so, yes, but I don't recall that name, I'm sorry.
Okay, there was a man that you met, though, and
That worked in computer animation, yes,
right.
I did.
And that was with Ms. Zip and with Ms. Scott?
I believe they were there, yes.
Okay, was there anybody else there?
I'm just trying to recall that day, and I remember the gentleman and his computer. We walked through some offices. There were different people. I can't recall who was actually in the room at that point.
Okay. Did you have to say hello and shake a lot of hands while you were walking through there?
A little bit.
Okay. And then I think lastly what I want to talk to you about is just your description yesterday and kind of the word that you used. You had indicated that you felt like that there was an assassination. What did you mean by that?
It meant that what was happening to me seemed very well plotted. It just seemed like when you're going through something, Liz, I can't possibly get you to understand it completely unless you've been through it. But realizing, kind of piecing it together very quickly as it was happening very quickly.
I'm listening.
Okay.
So I have to multitask. Go ahead.
It's okay. So I want to make sure you're hearing me. It was the idea that my perception was that he had shot at one tire, and then I saw him shoot specifically at another tire, and then he shot specifically into the hood of my car 3 times to presumably kill the engine, so I could no longer move. I was now trapped. Okay, I had nowhere to go. My car was being disabled, and then the gun was being pointed at me. Mm-hmm. So, to me, in my head, I was being terrorized and assassinated at the same time.
Okay, assassination usually is, as far as is it your understanding? Assassination usually refers to like a despot or a king or a president. That's usually
no, and maybe I'm using the wrong word, and if I am, I apologize. It just, to me, that was this again, using the word deliberate. There was like a plan. It was planned and plotted. Okay,
that's what you felt.
I being in the position I was in and trying to evaluate very quickly, you're wondering, in that situation, what is going on here? Mm-hmm. Excuse me. You're wondering what exactly is going on here, and you're piecing it together as something's happening very fast. Like what do I do? And I felt that my car was being disabled while I was in it, and then I was going to be killed in my car, and essentially that's what happened.
Okay.
I mean, that's what happened. I ended up dying twice, so I actually was murdered in my car.
Okay. And Mr. Kraska, as you reviewed, I think, in part, you said that Mr. Montana, you personally have viewed, okay, him specifically shoot the rear wheel of your tire, or rear wheel of your car, right?
Well, again, just to be very clear, I didn't view him shoot the rear wheel. I saw him move to that direction, and then I heard a loud gun.
Okay.
I didn't know what it was pointed at.
Okay.
But then I saw it specifically pointed at the front tire.
Okay.
And then I saw it shot into the hood of my car.
Okay.
So, in my mind, then and now, that was making sure I couldn't get away.
Okay, that's how you felt, that's what you thought, right?
I believed that, yeah, because I was in a running vehicle at the time,
Okay.
and now it was disabled.
Okay.
And
And
I
after,
wouldn't be able to get away.
okay. And after you said that the shots were specific into your hood, then there were also other shots that specifically struck your vehicle, right, in different places. Is that right?
As far as I know, through the windshield, through the windows, I'm sorry, not the windshield, through the windows of my car I was being shot at.
Okay. And your vehicle was struck specifically as you personally observed? Yes?
I saw and heard the windows smashing as bullets were coming at me.
Right. And as you've described it, those shots were specifically, as you said, what you observed at the front wheel, into the hood, and then after that is kind of just from hearing and putting it together from your senses.
And seeing holes in my body.
Yes, I was referring to your car.
I'm sorry that I
Okay,
misunderstood the
so
question. I apologize.
that's okay, and I'm sorry if I wasn't as clear. And I'm referring to your testimony here, and you're indicating that you specifically saw Mr. Montana shoot into the front wheel, correct?
I did not say that. I'm sorry. My voice is not working today. I said I saw him point the gun at the front tire.
Okay.
From my vantage point, I could not see the front tire.
Okay.
So I saw the gun pointed in that direction, and I heard the gun fire. Now,
Okay.
I cannot tell you that it hit the tire because I did not see that happen.
Okay.
It was an assumption.
I'm sorry?
It was my assumption.
Okay. But then the ones that were in the front of the vehicle, you said you specifically saw being pointed down
Yes.
and hitting the vehicle, right? And that was when you were in the driver's side, and as you've described, Mr. Montana's on the front side of your hood.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? That was
Right in front of me, looking right at me.
directly right in front of you.
Yes.
Okay. No more questions at this time. Thank you, Mr. Kraska.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Kraska.
Good morning. I'm sorry about my voice this morning.
Oh, no problem. You know the water's there. All right, so the first thing I'd like to ask you about is the defendant's face during the shooting. Ms. Scott and myself did interview you about a year and a half ago at your house shortly after the shooting, so
Yes.
I'd like to see if any of our transcripts can refresh your memory as to your statements regarding the defendant's face during the shooting.
Okay.
Objection, Your Honor, improper refreshment. Foundation for that. What page is that?
For court and counsel, I'll refer to page numbers once I ask the question. Turning to page 24 of the second portion of the interview. I'm approaching and I'm referring the witness to lines 20 through 27.
Is this a part one or part two?
It's part 2. sorry, just line 20 at this point.
What do you ask him to do? Read it to himself?
Read it to himself and then look up and let us know if your memory is refreshed, please.
Again, objection, improper refreshment.
Hold on, Mr. Kraska. What is it exactly you're doing here?
He has made prior statements regarding his impression that the defendant's actions at the time were deliberate and that he had a particular look in his face.
And so you're going to ask him whether he remembers saying these things, and if he doesn't remember, you'll have him refresh his recollection?
Yes, and he's already indicated on cross he didn't remember making prior statements about the defendant's face during the shooting.
So, and in that particular interview?
Correct.
Right.
Before today.
So, Mr. Kraska, you just read it to yourself, and then when you're done, overruled.
And have you, in fact, made statements about the look in defendant's face before your testimony in court for this trial?
Yes, I have. I thought I had.
Okay. In particular, did you make statements regarding the look in defendant's face when you spoke to Ms. Scott and myself back in February 2015?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what were those statements, if you recall?
Yes, I do recall, and it's the same look I see in my mind right now. It's his look was very stern. It was very focused. He had a very focused and stern look on his face.
And do you remember making a statement to myself and Ms. Scott during that interview that the defendant was on a mission?
I don't remember using the word mission.
Okay. Would referring to the transcript refresh your memory as to that?
Yes.
My lines got messed up. Let me have a moment. May I approach, Your Honor,
Yes.
a transcript of that?
Oh, we have hard copies right here, if you want.
Well, I have it on my laptop, so I'm showing my laptop. All right, and if I can have you review where it says Kraska, where I'm pointing, and look at that, and then look up and let us know if that refreshes your memory. Did that refresh your memory?
Yes, it did.
And did you in fact make an earlier statement regarding the fact that defendant appeared to you that he was on a mission?
Yes.
Thank you. So when you told counsel on cross that you didn't remember making those statements earlier, that was true, correct?
Yes, it was.
Having reviewed small portions of that earlier interview with Ms. Scott and myself, has that refreshed you as to whether you made multiple references to the fact that the defendant looked intentional when he shot you?
Yes, I did. And again, as I stated earlier, I have felt that as though I had talked about that, but Mr. Jacob, is that correct? I believe, seemed to not believe that was true, but I did think that I had, and now I've confirmed that I have.
All right. And then
I'm going to object, Your Honor, as to speculation as to anything about intent. So the question was just pending from Ms. Zip to Mr. Kraska about his speculation of Mr. Montana's intent.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, can I have the question read back, please?
Question, having reviewed small portions of that earlier interview with Ms. Scott and myself, has that refreshed you as to whether you made multiple references to the fact the defendant looked intentional when he shot you?
Thank you. And your answer to that?
Yes.
All right. In addition, do you remember using the word assassination when you spoke with us?
I believe I did use the word assassination or a word very similar to that word, yes.
Okay. And do you recall Do you recall the specific phrase you used that incorporated the word assassination in that interview?
I don't remember the specific phrase now.
Would reviewing the transcript help refresh you?
Yes.
I'm referring you to this paragraph, and once you've had a chance to look at it, please look up. Does that refresh you?
Yes.
Okay, so what was the phrase you used that incorporated the term?
I said that if he had painted with the same diligence in which he used an assassination plan and executed it, I believe.
Right, thank you. There was also a lot of discussion on cross about your current observations regarding defendant's face when he was shooting at you and prior observations or lack thereof. So I'm going to ask you some questions about that.
Easier if you just use the one we all have.
All right, so do you remember telling Ms. Scott and myself that you observed the defendant moving very deliberately?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to a different area. Move away from the shooting for a bit. Do you remember whether you made prior statements about defendant commenting on the condition of your house, clothes, and vehicle well in advance of the shooting?
Yes.
And do you recall during the conversation where defendant noted that you were a particular guy, he also said, "I'm going to do a great job for you"?
Yes.
Did the defendant ever talk to you about firearms while he was working for you?
I remember on one occasion he did.
Do you remember him mentioning his skill level with firearms?
Yes, I do.
What did he say about that?
I believe he said something to the effect, I'm a pretty good shot.
What, if anything, did he tell you regarding whether he enjoys shooting?
I don't remember an enjoyment level at this moment right now.
All right. With regard to the defendant calling you on the phone repeatedly, do you recall whether that was a behavior that occurred before or after he quit?
I believe it happened both.
Okay.
Both times.
After he quit, when he would call you repeatedly, what was the topic of his messages to you?
He called me repeatedly to tell me that he wanted to know if I was going to sue him. He kept saying, "You're not going to sue me, are you? You're not going to sue me, are you?" And I remember he said, "It would be really bad for both of us if you sued me."
All right. I'm going to draw your attention to the television. I guess first I should have you look at the actual exhibit. So I'm marking number 29. Do you recognize this photograph?
I do.
What is it?
It's a photograph of my backyard deck and next to the back of my house, and also a small grassy area.
Is it a fair and accurate depiction of the area?
Yes, it is.
Okay. May I publish?
You may.
Okay, is the image on the screen the same one that you're looking at?
Yes, it is.
All right. And then referring you to next in order, People's 30. Can you tell us what you see there?
I'm sorry, it's sideways. This is a photograph of I believe it's an Italian cypress tree that is next to my house.
All right, thank you. Is that a fair and accurate depiction of how it looked when defendant was done working for you?
Yes.
May I publish?
You may.
Is the image on the screen, albeit sideways, a fair and accurate depiction?
Yes, it is. It should just be turned clockwise.
Okay,
20
with the stucco on the right and the plant on the left?
Correct.
Thank you. All right. Regarding the fact that you had to take over and finish painting your house, do you recall about how many hours you spent on that?
I honestly don't. It would be hard to calculate because it was over the course of several days and weeks.
Okay. Do you remember any particular purchases from either Lowe's or Home Depot as it pertains to paint containers?
Paint containers?
Yes.
Yes. I remember at least one because it was a big one. It was a 5-gallon container of white paint.
Right. Do you remember if that was sufficient to finish all the work?
No, I don't believe it was. I think there was some additional paint cans purchased, but I don't remember the exact number. I'm sorry.
All right. And I believe you said, even despite all this, you never did get to the rear wall of the house.
No, I got to the rear wall partially, and I never got to the eaves on the back of the house because they were pretty high up, and frankly, my ladder wouldn't reach.
Okay. Did the defendant photograph you before shooting you?
I don't know, but as I've stated, it did appear as though there was a camera. I remember a flash. Whether I don't know if that was in fact a camera, but it did appear to me that it was. My guess was it was a camera, and when it happened, I remember thinking very quickly, "Why is he taking a picture of me?"
Do you recall testifying about that at the preliminary hearing?
I do remember the discussion about it. Yes.
Okay. Do you remember telling the officer on the ambulance about that?
Yes, I do.
May I enter the well, Your Honor?
You may.
Mr. Kraska, have you gone to law school?
No.
Did you major in legal studies?
No.
Did you consult with a lawyer before you signed this contract with the defendant for $3,000?
No, I did not.
May I approach with the contract, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay. So the contract from People's 16. Now, I note that there are a number of boxes at the top of the contract, little boxes. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. And are any of them checked off?
Yes, there are 2 checked off.
Which ones?
Stucco and wood.
All right. And is there a box toward the end that says to include a layer of primer? I'm sorry, so toward the end at the top of the page.
Toward the bottom of the page? I'm sorry, I'm not sure where I'm looking.
So referring you to this box at the top of the page where it says exterior.
Yes.
And then there are a number of little items that have boxes in front of them that can be checked off.
Yes.
Are any of those boxes checked off?
No, none of them are.
All right. Is there a box there in the second column regarding applying a primary coat of paint?
Relevance?
Where are you going with this, Mr.?
There was testimony on cross as to that seemed to indicate Mr. Montana had completed work above and beyond the contract. My point is that none of those itemized items were checked off, inclusive of a primary coat of paint.
Right. I'm going to overrule the objection, but don't spend too much time on this.
I won't, Your Honor.
Small matter.
Okay. Was that checked off?
No, it's not.
Were any of those items checked off?
None of them, no.
Notwithstanding the fact that it wasn't specifically checked off that he would apply paint, did you expect him to apply paint?
Yes.
Does the handwritten portion of the contract toward the bottom specifically mention fences?
Yes.
All right. When defendant worked for you, did he ever appear to be in physical pain?
No.
Did he ever tell you he had issues with pain?
No.
Did he appear to be in physical pain the day he shot you?
No.
All right. I have a few more questions, and they pertain to People's Exhibit 9. I believe yesterday we discussed through slide 22. There are in fact 34 slides on there, and so I'd like to go through some of the remaining slides. But I'm standing in front of you.
Your Honor, could you please instruct the counsel to turn her laptop away from the jury?
That would be best, so that we have only the evidence that's being discussed.
Yes, Your Honor. I am trying to shield it with myself. And for the record, the only thing on the screen is exhibits that have been testified about. All right, I'm going to start the slideshow at slide 22, so that's where we left off. All right, we already discussed this slide, so I'm now going to move ahead to 23. Does slide 23 comport with your memory of the defendant coming around the rear of the car toward where you cowered on the driver's side?
Yes, this is at the time when I had jumped back into the vehicle.
Okay, I'm
Is that
sorry.
correct?
Yes.
It looks like I'm back in the vehicle on my knees, kind of in a fetal position.
Yes.
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay, thank you. Skipping 24, 25, 26, and moving on to 27. Mr. Kraska, when you're ready, if you could look at the screen for slide 27. Do you remember the defendant pointing his gun at you as you were cowered inside your car?
Well, at that point, specifically, my head may have been pointed down. In this particular slide, it looks like it's down. So from where I'm cowering at that moment, I can't physically see the defendant. But that's my general understanding of where we were located at that time.
All right, and Mr. Kraska, I see it's very upsetting to you to see these slides, so I'll ask you to look away while I flip through to find the next slide that's relevant for you to talk about. Skipping 29 and moving on to 30. When you're ready, Mr. Kraska, if you could take a look. Do you remember the defendant leaving?
Yes.
And next, 31, if you could take a look. Are those the positions you remember the two vehicles in, even after the shooting?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll advise you to look away for a second. The van leaving the cul-de-sac.
Yes.
All right. And then the last slide is 34. So when you're ready, you can take a look at that. And in that picture, is the van gone?
Yes.
And it's just you alone next to your car?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Director, anything else? We're breaking 5 minutes, just so you know, but any questions, fine.
Okay. If you want to take our seat now, that's
We don't.
Mr. Kraska, you were just reviewed some of the pictures of the different areas of your house where you had some issues of carelessness, as you described, right?
Yes.
And that wasn't an exhaustive list, right? There were lots of other areas that you were not satisfied with. Is that fair to say?
Was that the totality of the areas? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
It wasn't?
It wasn't. There was lots of other areas that you were not satisfied with. Yes?
There were others, yes.
No more questions. Thank you.
Mr. Kraska, do you excuse?
Yes, Your Honor, subject to recall.
That means you're free to go unless they call you back.
Okay.
And we're running time.
We're joining the request for subject to recall, but before he is excused, we've asked to move Defense Exhibit B into evidence.
Which one was that?
That's the checkbook.
Would be admitted?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. As I said, I have a meeting in a few minutes that won't be long, but we're going to coincide with our break.